Hello, my name's Nigel Thorne and I'm concerned about the influence of queer theorists on Welsh institutions. Queer theory is a praxis-based philosophy that aims to bring about social change by changing language, most significantly by downplaying the significance of biological sex and elevating the significance of a personal gender. A gender identity. A gender identity is not a scientific concept. It is unfalsifiable. Nevertheless, a gender identity is required by queer theorists to dissolve the binary opposition between male and female. Queer theory is a political movement. As it says on a University of Illinois website, queer theorists' contention is that there is no set normal, only changing norms that people may or may not fit into, making queer theorists' main challenge to disrupt binaries in hopes that this will destroy difference as well as inequality. One influential queer theorist is Nick Lewis, director of Umbrella Cymru, gender and sexual diversity support specialists. We know Nick Lewis is a queer theorist because his LinkedIn profile tells us that he is. Lewis describes himself as an equality champion, gender and sexual diversity specialist, queer theorist, entrepreneur, adoption ambassador, do-gooder, and director of Umbrella Cymru. At a conference held in Newport in 2018, Lewis delivered a talk in front of a slide headed Children and Young People and Schools. On the slide there were a number of bullet points. 1. Almost a third of our clients are under 18. 2. Working with schools, teachers and staff. 3. School groups, peer support, empowerment and voice. 4. Support for gender diverse pupils specifically. 5. Pride events. 6. Training for staff. In response to a question about how to support young people who are exploring their gender identity, Lewis responded.
We are seeing an erosion of, or at least a critique, if you like, a challenge to toxic masculinity particularly, and we're also looking at what stereotypically femininity means to young people, and they are vehemently exploring that in the most fantastic way, but it's understanding of stereotypes, what gender means, what gender looks like, why gender looks like that, where that's come from, and really exploring what gender means to that individual. Gender is a very specific and individual concept, isn't it, to some and to many. And to all of us, we will have elements of what we would consider masculine traits, feminine traits. So it's exploring all of those things with a young person for them to feel comfortable about who they are and how they then develop that confidence within that and how that will change.
Why should children be encouraged to explore their gender identity? Lewis is a member of the Gwent Police Independent Advisory Group. He has delivered training for Dyfed Powys Police and has written a blog post for the Police and Crime Commissioner in Gwent. Val Thomas, the Deputy Police Crime Commissioner for Gwent, is one of his biggest fans. Umbrella Cymru were nominated in the British LGBT Awards for providing essential services for the queer Welsh community. Now, Lewis is a busy man. He has reposted a tweet from Ruth Pearce, co-author with Dr. Ben Vincent of Turf Wars, an introduction. Lewis was not impressed with an answer given by crime writer Val McDermid to a question on gender identity on Question Time.
I think that children and adolescents want to explore the world. For too long, we've forced people into hiding about their gender and their sexuality. I think it's entirely reasonable that people should be allowed to express themselves as they feel inside themselves. That's not to say that we rush to the extremes of surgery, for example. And I think that we ought to hold back with that end of things until people are at the kind of age of consent where they get to do other things that we think young people shouldn't be allowed to do. But you know, when I was little, I was a tomboy. I wanted to climb trees. I wanted to wear jeans, and I turned out to be a lesbian. I don't think the two things are connected because gender isn't the same as sexuality. No. But I think if you push people into the idea that if you feel like you want to wear trousers and climb trees for a few years, then you must be a boy, that's dangerous as well. And it pushes people who may be gay into thinking that actually they're not really gay, they're the opposite gender. So I think it's something where we proceed carefully, we listen to what the children themselves have to say, the young people themselves have to say, but we don't push them towards decisions that are irrevocable.
Okay. A shame a debate about gender is had among people without any specialist knowledge. Presumably, Lewis believes his queer theory training gives him specialist knowledge. 6-year-olds know who they are. To wipe the autonomy of children is to deny they exist until they are adults. Lewis has retweeted a tweet from Fox Fisher, co-author of the Trans Teen Survival Guide. Genes don't indicate binary sexes. Others are a little more critical of Fox Fisher's writings. Umbrella Cymru have enthusiastically tweeted about the Transforming Relationships and Sexuality Education Training Day arranged for teachers in Wales and run by fellow queer theorists Professor E.J. Reynolds, Dr. Esther McGeaney and Dr. Leanne Cole. Lewis has tweeted gushingly about Emma Reynolds and the launch of the Agenda Resource. Amazing launch, amazing resource, amazing person. Emma Reynolds, Heart. Along with Stonewall Cymru, Umbrella Cymru are a Welsh Government recommended support service. Lewis has influential connections. In 2017, Umbrella Cymru were instrumental in helping organise a Pride Day at Lewis School, Pengham. Assembly member Hefin was in attendance.
I asked Jeremy, I told Jeremy I was coming here today, so I asked him to send a message, a text message. So he's given me a text message to read to you today. This is from Jeremy Miles AM, the Assembly member for Neath. And he said, actually, he was the first out gay Assembly member because he was the first one to swear the oath as an Assembly member. Although Hannah and Adam contest that, but Jeremy said definitely. This is his message. I was quite young when I realised I was gay. It isn't always easy to be yourself when you were younger. It isn't always easy to be different. But the truth is, every single person is different. So try to be yourself. And talk to someone you trust. And if you don't feel you're LGBT, then be a good friend to someone who may be. A person who listens, a person who talks. Helping someone else be themselves is one of the best things we can all do. When Jeremy was younger, it was harder than it is today. It's still not easy. It's up to you, if you are LGBT, to decide how, when and if you want to share that with anyone else. But when you do, if you choose to, then you deserve to be included as part of a fantastic society. It's up to you to help us continue to build that fantastic society. And one thing I'd say is, you're an Assembly member, there's one word that sums up how I feel representing you guys in the National Parliament of Wales. One word. Pride.
Lewis works at the Welsh Gender Service.
Hi, my name is Nick and I'm the director of Umbrella Cymru. We specialise in gender and sexual diversity related support So we're so pleased to be working in partnership with Cardiff and Vale University Health Board as part of the Welsh Gender Service. As an organisation that's supported so many trans and non-binary people since 2015, we know that any service seeking to help people develop confidence and feel comfortable in their gender identity must offer emotional and practical support. With a diverse range of skills and experiences within our dedicated team, we can help you achieve your goals. We'll start with what matters to you right now and plan with you the steps that you might take to achieve the outcome you want. Everyone's path is different, but no matter where you are or where you want to be, we can be with you every step of the way. Some of the things that we've helped people with over the years include navigating health systems, attending GP and other appointments, name changes through our deed poll services, advocacy with employers and other organisations, working alongside people to help build confidence in their gender identity and to express their true gender. We've supported people to come out to parents, partners, children, friends and wider family members. We've arranged for social and peer-to-peer support and had the pleasure of joining people when shopping for gender-affirming clothing for the first time. We've also helped people complete applications for gender recognition certificates and so much more. Our team of passionate people want to support you. So no matter what you'd like us to help with, whether it's just some information, a quick chat, or ongoing, regular support, we are here for you.
Plastic surgeon Dr. Patrick Lappert has a different perspective.
Adolescents, when they see their bodies changing and they see that, life isn't so fraught with dangers as they thought. And by the time you reach young adulthood, 92% of them have gotten over what was a simple anxiety management problem, right? Mm-hmm. They needed guidance with, they needed cognitive truth to understand their condition and ways of managing their anxieties. That's what historically works. That's what the treatment always was.
Yeah.
But now instead what gender clinics are doing is they're helping them to rehearse the obsessive thought.
Yes.
They're not helping them manage the obsessive thought by offering truth. They're saying, oh, let's run with that obsessive thought. And here's some help in crafting that. Here are the words you can use. Here are the things you can do, the way you can cut your hair, the way you can use your voice, dress, story. All of that stuff is a created personality to serve an obsessive compulsive process. Mm-hmm. And as with all obsessive compulsive processes, at the root of it is a delusional thought.
Stella O'Malley explains how gender clinics can collude with the client's delusion.
So maybe we could start with the definition. Do you have a good definition of what collusion means?
Well, the definition I thought was most appropriate was a collusion in therapy is the process in which a therapist consciously or unconsciously participates with a client to avoid an issue that needs to be addressed. So very often, for example, just to give a kind of concrete example, I might have a client who's worried about their drinking. And if I happen to be somebody who was worried about my drinking, myself and the client could collude with each other and say, sure, it's Christmas, everybody drinks too much. And sure, we all drink too much when it's stressful. And COVID, sure, we're all drinking too much. And that would be a therapist colluding with a client unconsciously. You do it a lot. Well, I do it a lot. You certainly don't, Sasha. Around weight and chocolate. And sure, you can have a bar of chocolate.
I do it, Stella. I don't know why you think I don't. We all do it.
So it's a really understandable way to slip in. I do it with clients. I know I do it. You can slip into it because you're colluding, because you're human. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about a bigger scenario here where it's collective collusion, where so maybe clinics are much more prone to it than independent therapists. And I often say to clients who are worried about the therapy that their child or their loved one is getting, I often say sometimes independent therapists can be more independent than a clinic, because in clinics there can be very much a group ethos. And that can slip into collective collusion. But collusion occurs when a therapist somehow merges with their client's view of themselves and the world instead of helping the client explore the world. So you merge into whatever the client is thinking. You merge in when you should be stepping. You should have that gap between you and the client of, this is reality. I can walk into your reality with my Rogerian person-centered, I'll enter into your world, but you don't lose sight of your own world if you're a good therapist.
That's right.
Reality kind of sticks in no matter what. And that's a good therapist who can kind of have that kind of ability to step back when they've colluded, to step back and say, well, let's actually have a look at this. Let's explore your world.
Val Thomas is an independent psychotherapist. She has been raising concerns about the changes occurring in her profession and has written a book, Cynical Therapies, Perspectives on the Anti-Therapeutic Nature of Critical Social Justice. The book overview states, traditional therapy practice is facing a crisis due to the increasing influence of critical social justice. Also known as wokeness, activists are reframing the narrative of therapy, seizing control of professional bodies and institutions, and teaching future therapists to view their primary role as changing society.
I've become particularly concerned with the ideological capture of therapy, and I've been working with a group of people in order to start to produce a very well-informed critique of what's happening to our professions. And I recently published a book called Cynical Therapies, Perspectives on the Anti-Therapeutic Nature of Critical Social Justice. And what's happening here is that the field is pivoting. It's pivoting. It's no longer moving in the direction of including more and more dimensions of human experience. It's actually pivoting away from individual and universal dimensions of human experience. It's pivoting away from that to foregrounding the collective experience of the person. And it's also attributing the difficulties that clients have primarily to a kind of social and cultural context. It's not arising out of their own individual experience. So a very, very, very big pivot is happening. There is no critique whatsoever. And the reason there's no critique is the same reason as the lack of critique across the rest of society. Any attempts to critique it, you'd be cancelled and you'd be accused of being a bigot or reactionary. And of course, clinicians are particularly sensitized to those kind of slurs.
Like that. And one of the things that you write about in the book is about how this is being done through the subversion and the changing of language.
Yes.
And how changing definitions of things like social justice and other examples that you give creates a difference in training across the cohorts. So whereas a previous cohort of psychotherapy trainees would have learned this way, the next cohort comes in and they sound like they're learning the same things, but they're actually learning a quite a different thing under the guise of the original. And so generationally, as older therapists are retiring, you've got a new group of people coming in that have a very different agenda. And
exactly. No, and just to say that, a way in which you could kind of summarize this is to say, it's a sort of simple way. You could say that the label on the tin remains the same. Mm-hmm. So the label is counselling and psychotherapy, but the contents have been radically changed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is the speeded up march through the institution. So it's kind of obvious that we've got like an older generation who are still practicing traditional therapies, and also there's still some therapy schools that are producing or teaching traditional therapies. But the trainings that are happening particularly in the university context, particularly in the States, has shifted dramatically into critical social justice driven therapy. But they don't label it as such. Mm-mm. That's the key. And my sense is that therapists, sort of advanced clinicians, like most people in the therapy field, didn't understand the postmodern rhetorical strategies that were being used. I didn't realize it until I started to investigate. And also when I started to read work by James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, that was incredibly educative for me. And then I could see what was going on in terms of the language. And one of the big issues was the radical change that happened in terms of the definition of social justice. So social justice would have traditionally been understood in a particular way. But the use of it now is informed by a completely different worldview, a radically different worldview. And the way it's positioned is, and the way this strategy was absolutely brilliant. The strategy was to present it as an evolution. This social justice is even more inclusive, more humanitarian, than the previous version. But it isn't. It's something that's completely different. And so that if you objected to it, it'd be very, very easy to be accused of being a reactionary. And my bête noire about my particular generation, boomer generation, is that they were suckers for that. They were not able to withstand any accusation of being reactionary because they were revolutionary in their youth. So, yes, I'm not very happy with my cohort.
Umbrella Cymru have been encouraging young people to respond to a public consultation on the use of puberty blockers. Those parents who would prefer that the definitions of words weren't changed may wish to support Public Child Protection Wales. Links are included below.